Number 9. Ariana Grande. The award-winning music icon Ariana Grande has adoring fans all over the world. And just like with other celebrities in the spotlight, some of these fans will stop at nothing to meet the star. In the middle of 2022, Aaron Brown broke into the musician's mansion in California. The incident apparently happened on the singer's birthday while she was thankfully not at home. Brown had been previously arrested a year earlier for going into Ariana's house in LA while holding a large knife. While on the premises, he threatened to kill the star and her security team. After this violent display, Ariana received a restraining order to protect herself from the obsessed man. She said in a court statement that she was scared he'd come to her home again and try to hurt her family. Even with the order, Brown couldn't stay away. This time, he was quickly arrested after security alarms in Ariana's property were triggered. Police took him into custody, and he pled not guilty to charges of home invasion and more. It'll take some time for the court to make its decision on the case, but Brown will likely never get to see Ariana Grande ever again. This incident sheds some commentary on the growing problems involved with parasocial relationships or thinking a celebrity or famous person somehow owes you a relationship. Even though stars are in the spotlight, they're more often than not just regular people who deserve privacy like anyone else. It's not fair that Ariana has to live in fear in her own home because obsessive fans don't know when they've crossed a line. Number 8. Tyrone Thompson. One night in March of 2022, Mackenzie Anderson, a 21-year-old single mother, was brutally killed in the front yard of her Newcastle home. She was found by police with over 20 stab wounds, and her lover, 22-year-old Tyrone Thompson, was thought to be responsible for her death. On the day Mackenzie passed away, the 25th of that month, she had shown a few friends some text messages she'd received. They were full of threats against her and her son, saying that the sender would kill them. One of the friends remembers Mackenzie being completely terrified and stressed. The authorities arrested Tyrone that night at the scene of the crimes. They claimed that he somehow broke into Mackenzie's home before killing her. Apparently, the two were trying to get back together during this time after breaking up just a few months before. Mackenzie's friends tried to warn her that she shouldn't give him the time of day and should instead focus on her family. But in the end, it didn't matter. To top this situation off, 16 days before her death, Tyrone got out of jail for an unrelated domestic violence incident. On the 25th, he and Mackenzie were supposedly spending time together and were drinking, despite there being an apprehended violence order to stop the two from communicating. After Tyrone left Mackenzie's home, he returned later that night to carry out the murder. Thankfully, the victim's 2-year-old son was found physically unharmed at the crime scene, but he was covered in his mother's blood. This will, no doubt, be a traumatizing experience he'll have to deal with for the rest of his life. It's unclear at the moment if Tyrone has received a sentence yet for his actions, but he's likely still in jail, rotting away for what he did. Number 7. TIRANY Savage. On June 24, 2022, 35-year-old TIRANY Savage went to court in Michigan to try and get a protection order against Beau Eugene Savage, her husband. While trying to file for the order, she claimed that Beau had recently obtained a gun and threatened to kill himself multiple times. TIRANY also said he wouldn't leave their house and that she didn't want to put herself or her son in harm's way. Even with all of this, the court denied her order. The morning of July 10th, police received a call claiming 4 dead bodies had been discovered. When they went to investigate, TIRANY, Beau, her 13-year-old son, and her 58-year-old mother were all found dead. Gunshot wounds were named as the cause of death for each of the victims. The people who initially found them were friends of the young mother and wanted to stop in to check on her. While not a lot of information has been released to the public, since this is an ongoing investigation, authorities believe this was a case of murder-suicide. In the past, law enforcement had visited the Savage home for domestic violence incidents. They believe these murders were isolated and that the larger Michigan community has no reason to fear future danger related to this case. Number 6. Drake. The well-known California-based rapper named Drake has had his fair share of crazy fans in the past. But one 29-year-old woman named Misha Collins takes the cake for the most deranged of all his admirers. The famous Canadian filed for a restraining order against the woman after receiving countless threats and insults from her through chat messages. Drake claims that he's never even met the woman in person, yet she has constantly wished death upon him and his son. The rapper went on to say that her barrage of hate has caused him immense emotional stress and has made him fear for the safety of himself and his 4-year-old son named Adonis. Court documents revealed that Misha has been contacting Drake for over 5 years. In April 2017, she was even taken into custody for allegedly trespassing on his property in LA, and this wasn't the only time this happened either. In 2021, a lawsuit worth over $4 billion was filed by Misha against the rapper for defamation and an invasion of privacy. She even tried to get her own restraining order against Drake. However, given her past history with the rapper, the judge ruled to dismiss the case permanently. Thankfully, Drake currently has an order of protection against the woman. Number 5. Plea for protection. A woman from Loveland, Colorado pleaded with a judge in early 2022 to take the guns away from her ex-boyfriend. Lindsay Dom believed that her former lover, Javier Acevedo, would kill her and her teenage daughter if no action was taken. In September 2021, she tried to get a protection order against the 49-year-old man, but was only given a temporary order. Lindsay claimed that Javier had been extremely violent to her and her children in the past, and that it wasn't right for someone with this kind of history to own firearms. Recently, in June 2022, she once again attempted to get protection, this time telling the court that Javier threatened her. For the second time, Lindsay was given a temporary order before it was vacated just 2 weeks later. Sadly, this would prove deadly for the woman and her 16-year-old child. Just a few months later, the two were murdered. Police strongly believe, based on all of this past evidence, that Javier was responsible for their deaths. They think he shot Lindsay and her daughter before driving 30 miles away and taking his own life. If there's anything positive to this story at all, it'd be that 4 other kids were found at the scene of the crime unharmed. It's hard not to consider what would have happened if only law enforcement had listened to Lindsay's desperate attempts to save herself and her child. Would you ever consider going off the grid in order to get away from an abusive ex-partner? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Number 4. Liam Mountford. 19-year-old Ella Crow from the UK had a restraining order against her ex-boyfriend, 34-year-old Liam Mountford. Typically, an age gap like this leads to a power dynamic between the people involved in the relationship, which is exactly what happened in this case. During their short 10 months together, Liam was extremely abusive towards Ella, both physically and emotionally. It was so bad that at one point, the young woman considered taking her own life thanks to all the hateful things her lover had done. To name a few, he threatened to post indecent photos of Ella to the internet without her consent. He claimed he'd burn her mom's home down, and he even said he'd help tie a noose so she could physically act on her dark thoughts. In 2021, Liam ignored the restraining order Ella had against him and tried to contact her. For this crime, he was sentenced to serve a measly 2 months in jail. Along with this, he also had to complete about 150 hours worth of unpaid work. Even with these punishments, it's a far cry from justice. In a statement, Ella said this about her former lover's ruling: "The system has absolutely failed me, so now I will be looking over my shoulder everywhere I go." Hearing that this young woman is still experiencing immense fear and paranoia is tragic. Hopefully, one day, Liam will get the punishment he deserves and karma will catch up to him. Number 3. Freedom Fund. 33-year-old Mohammed Osman Adan and 36-year-old Rachel Abraham had 2 children together, but their relationship was complicated. In Portland, Oregon, during the summer of 2022, Rachel was granted a no-contact order against her lover after he allegedly strangled her in June that year. 1 month later, Mohammed violated the order by trying to see Rachel and was arrested. A few weeks after being taken into custody, the man was released after posting bail. Unfortunately, a couple of days later, on August 27, Rachel's body was found lifeless with stab wounds all over her. A couple of hours before her death, Mohammed suspiciously took off the device used to monitor him. That morning, authorities got a call that Rachel was dead, and her lover's voice was heard right before the line cut out. Police went to the woman's residence to investigate and found Mohammed there with 3 young kids. In one of the children's bedrooms, the carpet was covered in blood, and under the bed sheets, Abraham's dead body was discovered. An autopsy later revealed that she died from strangulation despite having many other fresh wounds. A neighbor believed they witnessed Mohammed screaming at the young mother, and they claimed they saw him forcefully push her up against a window. When Mohammed originally posted bail after violating the no-contact order, he was helped by the Portland Freedom Fund. This organization helps individuals get bail money so they can better fight their cases outside of a jail cell. The fund understandably received a lot of backlash once the story got out. Many believe Rachel could still be alive if the Freedom Fund had not helped Mohammed. In response to this, the organization claimed they were given no indication that there was any reason to be concerned over Mohammed at the time that they helped him. They were told that he was simply a financial provider for 2 small children. Number 2. Julio Garay. It must be devastating to realize that you can't trust the man you married, the person who's supposed to stick with you through thick and thin. In May 2020, Garay from California filed for a restraining order against her husband after she experienced years of abuse. At this time, the woman had managed to get away from the man she once loved, Julio, but he wasn't happy about her freedom. Julio found out that his wife had an appointment at the Madeira Medical Clinic on July 14th, and so he drove to the location, waited until she walked out of the building, then fired at her. Callie was shot, but she still managed to shield her 3 young sons from the gunfire. Sadly, she passed away from her injuries. Almost a year after the violent killing in November 2021, Julio Garay was found guilty of murdering his wife. He was given a life sentence for first-degree murder and a few other charges. Callie's father spoke up about his daughter's husband, saying he's a person who has no remorse or care about human life. The 3 children left behind will be taken care of by Callie's remaining family. They said they'll do everything in their power to make sure Julio is forgotten and the boy's mother will live on forever in their memory. Number 1. Violation. In March 2021, officers from the Colorado Springs Police Department responded to a call which stated that a man had been shot. Apparently, he was the ex-boyfriend of a woman at the scene of the crime. She had a restraining order against the man thanks to a long history of abuse in their previous relationship, but he violated it. At the time, the woman was with another man, who the ex-boyfriend then targeted. The ex started picking a fight with him, and things quickly escalated into violence. The other man got his gun out and began firing in self-defense. When investigators arrived at the scene, he told them that he wasn't sure if any of the shots actually made contact or not. However, a few hours later, another 911 call led authorities to the body of 41-year-old Otto Williams. He was found dead, lying in the snow face down. It's believed he was the ex-boyfriend and had visited the woman's neighborhood earlier that day. The investigation is still ongoing, but if this was simply a case of self-defense, it's likely no charges will be pressed against the man responsible for Otto's death. Have you ever had to get a restraining order against someone? Let us know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Bad Badger.